Okay. Did you guys catch the last round table? It's fair to say that that was rather interesting. So, can't be sure exactly how I'm going to bounce around on this one. Revolution. It was brought up. It's exactly where my last broadcast was actually terminated. Everything just cut halfway through. My phone died. There wasn't very much I could do about anything on that one. But I was prepared to explain that revolution doesn't work. It's a perfect circle. A time in which a revolution is useful is a time in which you actually need to go back to a better moment in history. If we look back in our history with true intent, we'll notice that there's not a whole lot of better moments in history. And that kind of licks the big donkey dick. But that's okay, we'll get through it. What happens here, what everybody's looking for, is not the ability to move backwards to a better place, but to push forward to create a better place. That, ladies and gentlemen, is not a revolution, it's a renaissance. See, revolution would have been useful perhaps during Hitler's Germany, when it was also very bad. A revolution, the people standing up, getting the political power structure out of the way, and returning to the political power structure that existed right before the fiasco or the debacle, doing whatever that needed to be done, would have been done, and bada bing, bada boom, Bob's your uncle. Revolution, yeah! March forward, overthrow the tyrannical dictator, and place forward, or readopt a new or a pre-existing way of thinking. Revolutions happen in everything. The Industrial Revolution, the religious, revolutions, the sociological revolutions. It's just a thing that happens. It's all about the brain and how we move forward, and sometimes they're violent, sometimes they're passive. It just depends which one you're referring to. Renaissance, on the other hand, is when you come across catastrophes and things that you just can't fix. Can't fix it, which is really where we are now. You just can't fix the system the way it is. But what we can do is we could replace everybody. And we could take the existing buildings, the existing structures, everything, all of that. We could take all of that and we can move forward and build new policies, everything. I could sit here and start but there are people far more intelligent than I that know exactly what I'm talking about here. Because revolution normally leads in certain areas on the violent side, and if the violent side of a revolution takes hold, there won't be a whole lot of political buildings left. We'll be lucky if we are intelligent enough at the moment of height of crisis and nonsense, that if we're intelligent enough to save the libraries and the schools and the hospitals, mob mentality takes over too fast in today's society. It's fucked up. So, revolution, Renaissance, it's far easier to get behind a Renaissance. The next thing is when that round table, which, guys, I don't know if you truly understand the power that you hold in your hand by doing the round table the way that you do it. But it's absolutely necessary. The round tables can't stop. I know Tin Man was explaining how much he was having fun with it and how he would like to continue doing it weekly. And the truth is that's That's what it is. Everything that the Worldwide Resistance Network has ever done has amounted to the creation of a well-informed round table. And if that table at any moment during its conversation feels that they are not adequately informed enough on the subject, that no one has to be told to, as you're discussing, Google that shit for us, please. Pop it up, read through it. Oh, wow, fuck. Guys, did you... No, seriously, hold on. Let's stop this for a second. Because what he brought up was nifty. Look at this shit. Please stop and look and read. And then all of a sudden, bam, something breaks out, which is awesome. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the point. That's what you're trying to do. Crazy, isn't it? The roundtable's open to anybody who would ever want to participate. Right now, Tin Man's just working with a few people and a few screens. But if we were to begin to assume that adding screens to this conversation becomes a complex thing that we just can't deal with, well, no, we know what we're doing when it comes to that. We've been utilizing that format for a very long time. What we weren't able to do then, because myself, were not technologically savvy enough at the time to pull it off, was the ability to record what we were doing. If you go back into our early stuff, we have like backstage passes where we record phone conversations that we have to release them to the people because, well, raw deal is, this is how we built it. This is what we did. This is what we spoke about. This is what came about what we spoke about, and so on and so forth. This is what we do. So when it was brought to the table, what kind of revolution would be required? Spiritual revolution became the one that seemed to have won the table. And the important part about that, it means that my table's not foolish. My round table that is placed there is not full of ignorant people. They have understood that although there's corrupt in politics and there's corrupt in banking, and at the absolute foolish side of it, there's actually corruption within our very existing societies, which sucks, but it is what it is. We've already wrapped our heads around that. There's people in the world that haven't been able to do that. They still believe the next door neighbor is the safest person in the world. You know, don't get me wrong, I know all my neighbors, and they're all great people. But you just move into a neighborhood and you don't know nobody, and you act and react in a way that they're just the safest people in the world. That's how people get hurt. So, moving right along. Spiritual revolution. Well, you know, if we reattribute what I was explaining about revolution and Renaissance, I think what we're looking for, end-all, be-all kind of thing here, somebody has to take a stance of some sorts, right? And I think religious and spiritual renaissance is the answer. I have to agree with the drummer boy. I have to agree with him for many reasons. I'll get into them, don't worry. Tin Man, fucking love your efforts, dude. You're doing it right. Thank you. Don't stop. Just don't stop doing what you're doing right now. Because we're about to give birth to something fucking phenomenal. Now, what are we going to give birth to, though? That's the thing. We're going to give birth to something amazing, though. You're just going to have to follow along here. This part here, this is where I come in. A lot of questions were spoke about the Talmud. A lot of things were spoken about Babylon. A lot of things were spoken about religious history. A lot of things were spoken about prophets, prophetess. There was a female prophetess. Her name was the Joan of Arcadia, Joan of Arc. There are a lot of things here that I'm going to try and cover, and then it's going to be covered briskly and quickly. The only reason why I can do this is that I will be able to do this without any objection and without anything. I will just lay out what I have come to understand. Now, what I have come to understand and what I believe are two separate things. It's an important thing to realize here, because I'm going to illustrate a crazy fucking theory, a crazy line. I've been working on it for a long time. In order for this to come through, you have to research shit you don't want to research. And trust me when I say these words, I will know whether or not you have actually researched it or if you are pretending that you researched it just to appease me. Okay? I will know by the way that you approach certain situations. It is one thing to know the name. That's already enough. Talmud. It's already enough to know the name to get started. But we got to move forward with its teachings and with everything that's found within it. The damn thing is 36 volumes big. If you honestly think this is going to be a cakewalk document exploration mission, you're wrong. Especially if we honestly believe that a spiritual and religious renaissance is required. This is why. When everything was happening in the creation of religions, okay, I have to make sure that the people know something. That all religions have a root. They all do. I believe it was Grandmaster Reverend who asked, he's like, these three big religions, yeah, where do they come from? And why? Correct? Okay, we will get into that. We spoke about Babylon and the Tower of Babel, and a little bit of conflict took place there. But what I'm getting at here, when I get into, because I will get to Babel, don't you worry about that. Because the Tower of Babel, Babylonian history, and, well, quite legitimately, the Babylonian Talmud, okay, it's going to be a lot. I don't know if you're going to be able to come along for the ride. I hope that you can. And I won't lie, this video may be the one that destroys everything. May destroys everything we worked for, everything. This is it. This is the answers that we've been looking for and searching for. Unfortunately, the answers are going to raise more questions than answers, but it's going to give us a view that's completely different than what we're used to seeing. That, I don't know. I don't know if we're ready. I'm sorry. I am sorry. I'm not going to hold this one back because I am going to speak of it today. But this kind of information is the kind of information where you would look at people and you would say, how dare you keep that from us? How dare you know of these things and not tell us? All right. We're going to do some simple doctrines, okay? We're going to cover Genesis, God creating the earth, okay? That's done. I'm not going to split it down to pieces, okay? The great power and energy that men and women once called God is not just responsible for creating the earth. He is, or she is, or it is required. Holy fuck, this is already starting great. Responsible for the entire universe. Point, that's it, it's over. We're not arguing that. There it is. Omnipotent, absolute, all the power in the world. Okay? Omnipotent, This is your creator. Your creator is omnipotent. This is what the doctrine teaches. Except the Pope said no. But we'll get into that on another day, in another video. But this is where we're going with it. Omnipotent. Completely powerful. Okay. Done with absolute precision. Pure intelligence. All of the intelligence ever existing. Your creator is omniscient. Is omniscient. Fuck, I can't even say that word, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's the one where you know everything. Okay? And omnipresent is present everywhere. Okay. If you're trying to find omnipresent, it's the little voice in your head. It's the one that I talked about last time. The little voice that we spoke about in previous videos. The one that drives everybody crazy. What makes you feel good or bad. The thought process that leads to the emotional reaction. That thing. Pineal gland is probably responsible for it. But you know what I'm talking about. The entire purpose and premise behind religion is that freaking voice. Everybody's got it. Nobody understands it. It's all good. We'll get through it. We're not done that yet. So he creates the entire universe, and here we are. Okay. I'm going to illustrate to you exactly how deep this is going to go. Okay? Now, you remember when the big man upstairs says, as you find the macro, you shall find in the micro? Okay? Good. Perfect. Moving right along. I'm going to illustrate to you the micro, which is the Higgs boson. If the micro is the Higgs boson, and there's going to be physicists and theorists that are going to say that what I'm saying here is wrong, and I'm almost sure that I got the gist of it. So I'm going to only try to give you a very broad spectrum of what I believe I understand here. But there is something that is absolutely tiny that has the ability to choose whether or not it casts a shadow. That's impressive. It means that this is probably the only thing measurable that we've ever noticed in our research that is faster than light. The funny thing is though, it can cast a shadow, meaning that at some point or another it can choose to slow down, which is very crazy because I thought it was only intelligent things that were able to choose something like slow down and cast a shadow. If you move faster than light, shouldn't you just be moving faster than light? Shouldn't that just be happening? Should there just be no choice in the matter? Should, you know what I mean? Like, as everything does its thing, it just does its thing. But this thing, not so much. It can go faster than light, or it can choose not to go faster than light. Very interesting. We're talking the double slit experiment, where it'll go through one of the sides or both of the sides at the same time. This is the crazy scientific research that I was looking into that led me to believe a simple thing. The human being, us, we are the macro to that particular micro that's being studied. This Higgs boson, these double slit experiments, all of this stuff, this at the smallest level, where we're realizing there's something down there that has choice. It's crazy stuff, man. That's going to blow the science way out of the water. New forms of computing, new forms of everything will come from these kinds of discoveries. So we're the macro of that, because we can make choices. We can behave erratically. We don't have to do things any one particular way. Isn't that crazy? So these are the science aspects about creationism. Most of the world believes that science and creationism are 100% separate. Kind of like we wish the church and state was separate. Religion and science are actually dating right now, and they're preparing to do a very impressive marriage. This is where the religious people of the world are saying, I really hope we taught them well. I hope that when we let science class be taught in schools that the kids caught on. Okay? It's crazy nonsense. Now, moving forward with that church-state separation thing. Okay? It was mandated, and I'll quote what the Pope of the time had said, although I can't say his name because I don't remember it. It's just that the message was poignant enough to stick in the brain and to observe today's outside societies. Is that when we took the religion out of schools, that the religious leader of the day had stated that although we will bow out and walk out respectfully, as they did, they made, it's not like they cursed us, but they made a good point to bring about to us to state that although we are leaving and you are happy today, you may not be happy with what comes in and takes our place. That was important information. So we get into the creation. We get into Adam and Eve. And I will play with Tidman a little bit when he said that something could have been happening while the gates of the garden were closed. Okay. I got into this huge discussion with my father-in-law not too long ago about time. The origins of time. So when you guys think that I don't think deep stuff, trust me, I do. Problem is that when you come to a conclusion, you have to be able to present what you find. Problem is, it's all in my head. It's all theory. It's all theoretical. I can't prove any of it. All I can do is speak of it. In order to explain time, I'm going to get into the universe again. Remember when I explained God didn't just create Earth, He created the universe, and this is why it's important to think that far outside of the box? This is why. We're talking about a celestial event, something that happened in the sky. We've all heard of, don't know how much research has been done, on Nibiru. But Nibiru is probably legitimately the answer to time. Okay. We're going to take a few biblical verses here. God so loved the earth, He gave His only begotten Son. Okay. Remember when there was a time when the Son was God? Okay. Because you remember when we're talking about words that are written down, these are humans. Men did this. Okay. So this is going to be very, very impressive now. Nibiru and the origin of time, man, that's freaking huge. I'm just putting that out there for you. Now, why would I even get into that? Because, like I've said before, religion, control structure, information, not knowing separates the people, so on and so forth. So I'm trying to put all this information in there in somewhat of a timeline here. So let us assume for a moment that we were actually created and the earth just, here we go. Well, this is what the astrophysicists have figured out. They've noticed something special about the planets that are around us, where the planets are positioned in relativity to our sun. This information is impressive. Just like when you observe the rings of Saturn and how their gradients all different apart, which makes this beautiful ring, okay, done through vibrational frequency that surrounds the planet. They attributed this to the sun. So the sun being the planet, which we all know the sun's a star, would have rings, similar to the rings of Saturn. So by using the math that they figured out in the rings of Saturn and applied it to the solar system, they realized that, yeah, there are somewhat rings. You wouldn't notice it right away, but they are there. It's where the planets are, that those are the rings, the orbit. If there were billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of fucking particles, where each planet orbits could be constitute as a ring. So the sun would appear to have rings around it, similar to how Saturn has rings around it. Okay? Is that not freaking wow? Okay. Here's the interesting thing. All the planets are on these areas, these very specific areas. The vibrational frequency vibrates there, and this is how the planet was created there. Problem is, Earth? Not so much. We are in what is called a Goldilocks zone. But what's baffling the scientists is that we legitimately look like we were plucked out of nothing and just placed there at the perfect spot. So that's interesting. So let's go back again to Nibiru and the creation of time. If there was life on Earth before... Okay, here's an interesting question. Was there life on Earth before there was time? Okay, I don't know. Let's examine this. Let's see what's up here. Do you know what Nibiru is? Nibiru is a dwarf star. Okay? Stay with me on this. How is a dwarf star born? Okay? It's when a star has amassed so much energy and it pushes out a dwarf star. Well, when that dwarf star pushes out and it just goes through the sun, for lack of a better word, once again chooses. It's why I don't have a problem believing that the sun is a living entity. And that's because it chooses. It can go supernova and destroy the entire solar system, or it can give birth to a dwarf star. If it chooses to give birth to a dwarf star, well then that's interesting, because this is why. It lends credibility to a lot of things that were already discovered. For instance, just about every solar system found, binary solar system. Binary or greater. I think I've discussed this a few times in the past. But in order for us to be a binary solar system, we would need, quote unquote, a second sun, second star. So this brown dwarf gets spit out. And it goes right through the solar system. And it does so with immense, immense, immense power. Here is the dawning of time concept here. It didn't have to happen as soon as the sun did it. There's no guarantees that we were positioned within the solar system at the right spot for it to happen the first time. But as soon as this dwarf star would have went out, it would have just continued to go out in space. That's just what it does, until it finds something larger than itself to slingshot around. Well, when it slingshots around, what does that mean? It's coming back. It's created an orbit. Now it's going to come back around our star, and it's just going to keep doing its thing, and these two stars are going to dance, as all binary systems do. Just because we don't see the second sun within our solar system doesn't mean it's not present. our sun is quite powerful. But I'm going to say something here that's very impressive. When this thing goes past us, it has a gravitational pull. So, this is where Tin Man's theory of was shit happening on Earth while mankind was in the Garden of Eden. There's a strong possibility, yes. A lot of things could have been happening. Because once this dwarf star finally just whizzed past us, there was the first great war in the heavens. Okay? Let's take on the notion of a dwarf star. Ready? God so loved the earth, he gave his only begotten Son. So instead of going supernova and destroying the entire solar system, he loved the earth that he gave birth to a dwarf star. Okay, awesome sauce. Now, when this thing goes past us, there's a possibility, a small possibility, that the earth was not rotating. The earth was maintaining its orbit around the sun, but it was not spinning as it was rotating around the sun. Get where I'm going with this? So when it spit out the dwarf star just passes Earth. I honestly think that right there is the dawning of time. Because when it goes past us with such ferociousness, it begins rotation of the earth. Does this help explain a little bit why certain things lived longer before than they do now? Did something drastic happen to the earth that changed something? The first war in heaven, when we were granted time, when the world began to rotate. That's impressive, because remember, all this religion, men and women, we look at the stars. This is where all our stories are coming from, is the stars. And this little voice in our head that helps us think. This is the pretext of religion. So let us just not be ignorant to other information just because of religious spirituality. So moving right along with the dawning of quote-unquote time. That's the first war in heaven. We can also say, you know how they say God loved the earth, he gave his only begotten Son? Okay. Now here we go again now with some more verses where God cast Lucifer out. I'm not saying that Jesus and Lucifer are the same. I'm saying that this planet has an orbital pattern, which means it visits us often. And every time it visits us, the earth is judged in one way, shape, or form. So is there a possibility that the dinosaurs were walking when the earth wasn't spinning? Is there a possibility that it wasn't a comet that hit the earth? Perhaps it was Nibiru that flew past the earth, which caused the earthquakes and devastations and everything required for, well, quite legitimately, an extinction level event. Nibiru is called many things. It's also known as the Destroyer. It's called Nemesis. It's also called Planet X, the 10th planet in our solar system. It's named many things. So how much of it is true, how much of it is false, that I can't ascertain. But it's definitely a piece of information that's out there. So what happens if when Christ gets crucified during the crucifixion? What if Christ knew the orbital pattern of Nibiru? What if Christ figured out that that thing was going to come while he was alive? Knowing the signs in the skies was an extremely powerful attribute for any prophet to hold. So, he knew something was going to happen. He said he was going to be judged. Everything's going to happen. And he says it with absolute attestation that he knows that these things are happening. It's almost as though he was taught by somebody what to look for, and they told him, yeah, it's coming. It's kind of like 2012 all over again, but that time they were right. That's the thing. When you guess it and you actually get it right and it's coming through, and this is it. That's what there is to it. So, the signs in the sky, what creates the earthquake, what creates this, maybe, what creates the floods. So, what's the Great War in Heaven? What are you talking about, man, with this Nibiru? Every time this thing comes by, because it has a gravitational pull, and it's only 2/3 the size of the sun. So it's not the size of the sun, it's not bigger than the sun, so it can never compete with the sun. Our original sun will always be more majestic and glorious and far more glorious than this thing. But this thing is still 2/3 the size of the sun. So when this thing comes past us, for a little bit there, we begin to think, you know what? Maybe we can follow this thing. The gravitational pull pulls on the planet. You ready? I'm taking you for a wild freaking ride here, okay? I'm bringing science, astrological conspiracies, religious conspiracies. I'm combining them into one, and I'm just illustrating a huge line here. Okay? So, God cast out the devil. So let's just say that this thing does an orbit and comes back, messes with the planet again. So maybe the Earth doesn't rotate the first time it passes. Maybe the second time it passes, we have the dawning of time, rotation. Maybe the time after that it passes, we kill the dinosaurs. Maybe the time after that, when it passes, Noah's Ark hits. Maybe the time after that, when it happens, we crucified Christ. Which is an important thing, because every time this thing passes, something terrible happens to the earth. Crazy terrible. Every time. That's why it's known as the destroyer. That's why people want to track it. Okay? But it's the morning star, it's Lucifer, it's this, it's that. It all refers to this thing. So here's what I propose to speculate onto you. We've discovered a few things. We've discovered that the universe is expanding, which means that everything is getting further and further and further away from each other. This logic would dictate that we are getting further and further and further away from the sun. Okay? Global warming doesn't truly make sense, because if the universe is expanding and everything is actually going further away, then we are actually going further away from the sun. So that would fucking suck. But anyway, that would affect gravity, gravitational pull, sun, planet, how close, how far, all underlying factors here. Okay? So I propose to you a time in planetary history, whereas the planet got so far from its original star that the gravitational pull from its original star had weakened from its original state. And when the time came, are you ready? When the time came for the dwarf star to do its orbital path that we all recognize, that always happens, it always wreaks great devastation. And for a time, the earth shall be governed by Lucifer, right? The one that was cast out. Well, what happens if we're far enough from our original star and the gravitational pull is far less? That when this thing actually comes by us and does its ritualistic power grab with the planet, it actually wins. What if it actually takes us with it on this amazing ride that it does every 3,600 years? See, I've been trying to figure out a lot of stuff. A lot of rational stuff behind big things, such as, we'll say, aliens. Can you give me a rational scenario in which aliens would actually look for us? Can you? Unless we were emotionally attached with them in one way, shape, or form in times of old. That would be a reasonable scenario. So what's to say? Here's the breaking your brain concept. What's to say that the sun that we see in our sky, right up there every time, is our original sun? I propose to you that the religious books and the religious stories of old that spoke of God and the invisible man in the sky and the wars in heaven and all these things, I propose to you that they are of the most significant astrological events to ever take place, that the human brain has yet to fathom how it's happening. But I propose to you this, that there is a sun in the universe that has existing planets that harbor life. I propose to you that this is an awesome fucking place in the universe. I propose that we are part of this. And that there was a time where the star gave birth to a dwarf star which passed us, created our rotation, came back, passed us again, probably ripped Pangea. Maybe the ripping of the order of Pangea happens the first time. But it just keeps passing and keep passing and keep passing through its orbit. And we have the big sun here. And through the other thing that we're discovering, the expansions of the universe, we're slowly doing this. And this thing just keeps passing and fucks our shit up. And then keeps passing and fucks our shit up. And keeps passing and fucks our shit up. And then finally it keeps passing and it takes us for a ride. So now this sun that is with us, that we have begun to orbit around, because it ripped us out of our natural orbit and is doing a 3,600 year orbit, comes back, we're coming with it, doesn't matter, it's going to happen like that. How do I believe that this is going to happen like that? Because for 1,000 years we will be under Lucifer's rule. I propose this because there's something to understand about dwarf stars. When a dwarf star gets too far from its original star, it extinguishes. I think that just explained ice ages. When the dwarf star, throughout its orbital path, returns towards its original star, it will reignite. I think that just explained global warming, because for a period of planetary time there will be two suns in the sky until the dwarf star moves its way out and extinguishes and brings upon another ice age on whatever is following it. But don't be so grim, because here's the explanation to aliens. Did y'all just see what happened to Earth? Can somebody go find out what happened over there? Okay, yeah, we got it. We got some good ships. I think we might be able to follow this orbital path. You know you're asking us to do the impossible, right? You're asking us to follow a freaking star. Oh, Go. Go. Don't leave them out. Do you see how big the universe is out there? Don't let them go face that alone. Do you notice now why we are in a perfect spot around our sun? An unexplainable Goldilocks zone? Because during the war in heaven, the power struggle between the original sun and the dwarf star and the planet, there came a point where it was just like, yep, this is good. I'm going to stick with this. Thank you. And then we just moved. This is a huge astrological event that would require so much study that it... Nah. Okay, we wouldn't understand our asses from the hole in the ground even if we began to try. But for 1,000 years, we're supposed to be ran by Lucifer. Well, if the orbit is 3,600 years, how can it only be 1,000 years? Because when we leave the original star, it extinguishes, an ice age would take place. Probably for the better half of the voyage. And then when it would reignite, then whatever happens to humans and happens to us and happens to the planet does its thing. Here we are, boom, and now there's about 1,000 years before we get back to our original destination. Something that we will see happen to us because the period for harboring life will be there. So we'll see it, and then we'll get destroyed again, which is what we do, and then we'll come back around, and then we'll find areas where life can do its thing again, and then it extinguishes, we have an ice age, then we come back around, and it gets all fucked up. And this happens over 3,660 years. It gets all fucked up. Now, unless they actually had a reason to come and look for us, I can't see any alien race interested in us. But if we were all part of the same planetary neighborhood, it would make sense to come look for us. So that's kind of cool. What else is kind of cool is that we're probably going back towards the original sun now. According to what Jesus was saying, the end days, how it looks, so on and so forth, it sounds like we're going towards the original sun again. That's crazy nonsense, I know, but it's okay. So that's the origin, dawn of time, that's the universe, that's the planets, that's all of that stuff. That's a crazy amount of hocus pocus. And that information is what's encoded in the religious texts of the world, is that there is a doomsday event that takes place, and that there's nothing that can be done to stop it. Regardless whose book is right, it is moot point at that point. So this is going to be one hell of a ride. But Tower of Babel, I think that was another time in which Nibiru was in the sky. So let's get into some of that. But before I get into that, I gotta smoke some fucking serious weed. I'm actually gonna press pause and take a breather, because now that I'm done speaking about the creation, the universe, the perhaps that what we're talking about, gods, is illustrated in the sky, so on and so forth, I'm gonna go back and scale it down, quote unquote, a dimension. And I'm going to start explaining to the very best of my own ability what us piddly little humans were doing when all this was happening. Because we didn't, how the hell did we go from pounding rocks onto sticks to pounding keys on a keyboard? Intelligence, incredible stuff. So we're going to keep moving forward with this information. I just need to take a break, because every time I discuss Nibiru, it becomes too complex, because we're talking planets and stars and all this stuff, and one little planet, which is us. And we can't prove any of this. We can only try to figure out whether or not it's more plausible than not. That's what I've always been trying to figure out. Is it closer to reality than fake? Alright, so now we're going to move forward with religious history to the best of my own recollection. This is going to fuck people up. Because the truth is that every argument that's around this topic is the premise behind where the wars start. So, let's get into the three big ones and where they all come from. Abraham. They called the Abrahamic faith for a reason. Now, why are they fighting? Well, do you guys remember this this story about Isaac needing to be brought to the mountain and sacrificed? Okay, well, nobody really knows why at first, right? They don't know the story. Well, the basic pretext is simple. Abraham's supposed to be the prophet of God at the time, so he's supposed to be the one that's talking to the world on that behalf. Cool. Okay. Thing is that Abraham and his wife, they apparently aren't having any children. It's not working out for them. It happens. So Abraham's wife gives Abraham permission to go and conceive with another woman in order for him to have an heir, in order for him to have a child. Well, that was rather noble of her, wasn't it? That was cool. She let that happen. Moving right along. Apparently, angel visits Abraham's wife, announces to her that she's going to become pregnant. Well, if you guys understand how heirs work, isn't it your true bloodline that gets to be the heir to your throne? Well, the problem here is the son that came from the handmaiden, Ishmael, is still of Abraham's blood. And the the son that comes from Abraham's actual wife, Isaac, he would be considered the child that was conceived under wedlock. He would be favored by above, according to what some people would believe. Well, tribe of Isaac, if I'm not mistaken, would be where you find Christianity, and the tribe of Ishmael, I believe, is where you find Judaism, and Islam comes from the younger brother Jacob, if I'm not mistaken. No, Shem. It comes from Shem. Islam comes from the stories of Shem. If you guys are trying to figure that out, okay, that's where that kind of comes around. But before we get into that, let's get into how there is no good people on the planet. Oh, you guys, people, I was wondering if someone was going to bring it up when you guys brought in that whole Adam and Eve nonsense. Because Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, if Abel was righteousness and Cain slew Abel, if Abel was removed from the earth, then how could the good of the earth propagate forward afterwards? Let's keep going with how do we populate the earth with the first two suns? The sun's going to Bob. Yeah, that works. That happens. Just say it. Just put it out there. When you were looking for different people to go to, I don't know. That was an interesting one too, because if they're supposed to be the first, I guess they're supposed to be the first. Unless, of course, we bring in all of the universe stuff again. And all of the planetary stuff, the very real and tangible stuff. The fact that the Garden of Eden may not have ever been on the planet. That if you guys are worried about aliens invading Earth, look no further than yourself. We may not be from here, which is why we don't find that we fit in any of our explanations. Millions and millions and millions of years ago, who knows? Who knows? We could be the descendants of somebody looking for somebody that just happened to land here for something. I don't know. Crash landed is always a good one. When you start attributing alien stories, to us, a lot of religious stuff starts to come about. You guys seen The Knowing? Spoiler alert, aliens save one child and one boy and one girl. And they're placed on a planet, an unmolested planet. Very, very, very Adam and Eve-esque. It's interesting. This is why things like people like the Pope have been saying things like, if there are aliens, if they do exist, God made them too. No shit, Sherlock. If the guy or the woman or the great power and entity of whatever, if that is responsible for all of creation, then yeah, they have to be part of the plan. We don't have to like it, but they're part of the plan. This gets wildly twisted and out of control because now we've gone through the celestial aspects and there's so much to discuss there. And then we go through what was happening to the earth at that time. There's a lot to go there. Then we end up in what one would call the early stages of civil humanity, where religion's coming around and politics is coming around and people are now grouping themselves into larger numbers, into smaller places, and so on and so forth. All of these things have this natural curve that come forward. We are honestly just having a hard time grasping the last 200 years. And we can almost go back 200 years with little to no problem historically, because about 200 years ago is where like the height of just purely writing books properly is found. Right? So acquiring information that is only 2 centuries old is becoming easier today than it was 500 years ago. 500 years ago, if you were looking for stuff that was just 200 years old, that was probably hard to get your hands on. Because it's still hard to get your hands on today. But you get my point. So we are really, really evolving how our information carries from hand to hand to hand. For instance, I could walk out, I could be killed tomorrow, and this video would still be available as a quote-unquote teaching tool on the internet. It's just going to be there. It's like I've always joked about it before. Bible stands for compilation of books. What is Facebook? A compilation of people creating their individual books that all have to be found in one place. Facebook is the Bible. It's the book according to whoever. It's a very interesting thought, but it is what it is. Can't take it away now. It's there. It's darn near a human right, Facebook. That argument will come soon enough. Mark my words. So, moving right along. We got the whole Cain and Abel nonsense. We got the other people nonsense. When we were talking about Adam and Eve and cloning and all that stuff, all you're illustrating is that God is intelligent, knows everything, omniscient, or omniscient, or whatever the fuck it's called. By the way, Tin Man, the word that you were looking for is called anesthetic or anesthesia. Moving on. Okay. The Tower of Babel was found in Babylon. Okay. Well, some really nasty stuff happened in Babylon if you actually pay attention to the society found in Babylon. There's a difference between civil society and society. Societies are everywhere. It's groupings of people. It's how they behave that makes them either civil or non-civilized societies. Babylon was an uncivilized society. Babylon allowed some of the most grotesque forms of sexual perversion. At this point, it's okay to be gay was not the first time, and that was so not their biggest downfall. Babylon, it was children were okay, animals were okay. Babylon was an abomination to the planet. If you looked at how human beings really should never rule their world or rule their lives, if it happened, if it's a true history, Babylon is what you don't become. Okay? So that's the truth. Tower of Babel, the significance of the Tower of Babel is huge. A couple of things have happened here with the Tower of Babel. One, that's when nations were born. We were talking about creation of time and creation of this and creation of that. Well, there apparently, and I think the language was called Aramaic, but there was a time when every human being spoke the same language. We all understood each other. It's a fantastic thing. You know, kind of how like dogs understand each other and cats understand each other. And, you know, because wouldn't it be fucked up if the poodle really didn't understand the German Shepherd? Right? Well, that's a species communication thing. That they don't have those barriers. We do. Language barriers. That's us. We have that fuckered up problem, not them. The animals got that shit sorted out. The Tower of Babel, the story goes as such that they got the builders of the world to build the biggest building available. Quite short in today's comparison, to tell you the truth, but it was a building. Then they got the best archers of the world, the best archer to climb that tower and try to kill God with his arrow. Okay? That's a pretty cool story, considering we're firing missiles into space. We fire missiles into space without any problems whatsoever. Not killing God there. Not even hurting God at all, are we? The arrow wasn't going to hurt God. God knew it. I know it. You know it. Now the whole world has figured it out. That it was not the arrow that he was worried about. It was at the last time human beings got together under one banner, and we were all like, kumbaya motherfucking ya. The last time humans got together as a collective, and we all were able to communicate, we're all able to talk. Our collective decision was to kill God. Take a look at what we're doing right now. All the religions of the world. If you are not part of one of them, are you not part of something that degrades the Creator? Are you not part of something that's trying to kill God? How fucked up is that, when you think about it? That when humans were able to communicate all together under one language, the choices that we made was to try and kill God. So apparently, the angels say, let us confound their languages so that they can't communicate readily with one another. Well, that's kind of mean. That means one human from one part of the world can't communicate with another human from another part of the world, although we are the same thing. That was, quote unquote, apparently divine punishment. But here's where it gets fun. If you hit that little beautiful translate button, you conquer the Tower of Babel's punishment upon the earth. But the truth is that you can only do that if you are intelligent enough to do so. One of the blessings of the Creator, intelligence. So, moving right along. When you're asking what kind of wickedness took place in Babylon, well, it was bad. It's stuff that nobody really wants to preach. But it is what it is. It's where the Jews congregated. It is what it is. Remember, it's apparently the oldest and first religion. So, other than paganism, the worship of the planet was by far the first religion ever existent. People were just happy water was there so they could drink it. They were just happy that the sun would rise instead of a rainstorm. They were just happy and happy. And they showed gratefulness for what they had. We have to be careful when we talk about just doing what you want to do. You have to be careful with that statement. Because do what thou wilt shall become the whole of the law is one of the satanic verses. So make sure that you know what you're teaching when you teach things like, no, you just got to do what you want. You don't do what you want. You do what is right. There is a big difference in how we teach that. You do what is right and you do not what is wrong, and you seek spiritual guidance to always know the difference. That is life. But that's not what's happened. Doing what you want has become the whole of the law, which is one of those things that you have to look at, because if this religious history, it's like I said, this book, only a little bit of this book hasn't happened yet. It's the book of Revelation. John's revelation to the world. That's what this is. That's where we are right now. That's if you believe all the other stuff. If you don't believe all the other stuff, there's no reason to believe the ending stuff. But if you believe all the other stuff, the ending becomes far more poignant and important for you to look into. Short and skinny, almost everything that needs to happen has happened, as I stated in my previous video, when I started explaining wars, rumors of wars, HARP, okay? Talk about crazy stuff. Guys, we're at the point where we're talking about like the Hadron Collider now. That is crazy science. Is it dangerous? Probably. Are we trying to do it on such a minute scale that the danger is almost non-existent? You know that's most likely what we're doing here. As a human creature, we're not going big or going home. Not with this one. Not right now, anyway. That would be unwise. The reason why things like cloning aren't happening anymore is because things like the Geneva Convention step in. Well, why would you want to inhibit cloning? Y'all didn't see fucking Star Wars, man? The clone army? That's the point, ladies and gentlemen. That right there is the utmost valuable point of it all. Our technological and scientific in both mechanics and bioscience, the advancements are freaking phenomenal if you actually take a moment to just stop and look at them. Okay? Did you guys know that the T600 already exists? It's the sex bot that we were joking about so many years ago. It's the IcoBot. Okay, these exoskeletons, these things will be made prototypical, so very prototype-like, very simple, and just to see if they can make it walk and interact. The creator of that program is not even going to care if you're aware that you're interacting with a machine. That's going to be the moot point for them. They're just going to see whether or not the machine can actually interact. Covert interactions take place at a later date and a further point within a project. Okay? So the Hadron Collider, man, that's huge. That's they're duplicating the Big Bang in small increments. So if I could grab a rock and I could spin it around really fast and make it collide with another rock, I would like to see what happens to both these rocks when they smash. Well, what they're doing is just that, but at the smallest levels with particles. They're breaking away shit that in their thought process is unbreakable. It shouldn't break. They're literally colliding particles. Now, Hadron Collider, what would be its useful, beneficial application for humanity? Is there one? If I had the choice, what would I use it for? peaceful technology, right? If this thing can crash particles together, then could it crash, for instance, two molecules of hydrogen? Oh no, wait. Would it be able to crash one molecule of hydrogen with two molecules of oxygen? If the Hadron Collider could collide this properly, we could legitimately make water. With nothing but particles, nothing but molecules that are just chilling. We collide those molecules, we can make our own water. That's nifty. So moving right along. Hadron Collider, the scientific stuff that's there is impressive. Conspiracy theories surrounding it, the occult surrounding it. I haven't even really got into occult yet. Okay? But the stuff that surrounds that is impressive. They call it the work of the devil. They call it the other side. All right. Let's keep trucking on through. Religious wars. Where would they have started? Probably along the lines where somebody said, you can't do that. That's against God's will. It's probably where religious wars began. Okay, so when we talk about Babylon and the wickedness found within it and the religion that was found within it, I would tell you a secret. It's not a religion that we should romanticize about at all. Okay, there's nothing attributed to Babylon that is of virtue. That's it. Babylon was destroyed. It was not praised, it was not exalted. It was destroyed for a very specific reason. Nobody really clicked in on that one. And then when you take into consideration that it is the Babylonian Talmud, so it is the religious text of a destroyed people. Need I say more? That this was something that was extremely, extremely deranged. They did not like what they were doing here for obvious reasons. So it was destroyed. This is where we are talking about the whole, will God spare a city for a righteous person, for a righteous man, or for a righteous woman? Where he sends angels. This is how bad it was. This is how fucked up. If we believe in this story, if we believe in this connotation, this place was so perverse and disgusting that the angels, so when don't think it doesn't happen, but the angels protested with God and stated that how could we destroy this? Look at how much of your creation is here, and you taught us that this was important. And he goes on to explain, tell you how important it was to obey the commandments, and this is why when you don't, this is what it becomes. And now this has to be destroyed. This scourge can't go throughout the earth. Okay, well, at this point, we're not saving a city. We're going to save souls. Save people. You go down there, you find the righteous. Hey, you bring them out. You bring them out. Don't worry about it. I'll show you the path. But this is going. This is happening. There's nothing that's going to prevent this from dropping dead today. It's happening. And so they confound the languages of the earth. We can't communicate anymore. Alongside of destroying the tower. And then we get into Sodom and Gomorrah, where we're looking for holy, righteous people. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Seth's wife, Sarah, who turned and saw the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and saw the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah by the hand of God with fire and brimstone. And as she turned and saw this, she turned into a pillar of salt. She was faithless because she was told to leave and to never to turn to look back, because that is how evil it was that she would. The point was that if she couldn't even listen about turning and looking back, then they couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't bring the teachings of Babylon into the new world. She couldn't even help but remember it. It wasn't destroyed yet, and she was still already trying to remember it by turning and looking back. And the point of this was that this was not something that should be remembered. This is why we put such precedence behind things that ought to be remembered, because they really just should be remembered. But that was an event that was not to be remembered. The culture that was found there, the people that were found there, the absolutely everything that was there was not to be remembered. It was to be destroyed. But then it was found again later in human history. Now we're going to get into one of Tim Ann's statements about Zionism being younger than Mormonism. The devil wears many faces, I guess, is the only expression I could use to truly bring it to light. The Pharisees of old were Zionists. The religious corruption of men's souls began during the oral Torah, because this is where, once again, we started questioning God's authority and questioning God's judgment. What the very words that he wrote with his own finger, known as the Ten Commandments, just wasn't enough. We then had to open groups of people to then begin to argue about these commandments. These were known as the Pharisees. These were the people that followed no true law given to God, by God, yet scrutinized every law given by God, and they were the ones that would punish you for not obeying the laws that they didn't follow. Very impressive stuff. So this is crazy, because now we're right around Jesus Christ's time in the story, because we had the Tower of Babel fell and wickedness had been conquered. I guess we couldn't just stop people from remembering, because it came back, because we ended up destroying the earth again with Noah's flood. I think I got into... No, I didn't actually. People talk about the ark, right? I just don't think it's a boat. Go take a look at some of my other videos. I hint that it might not be a boat. You can find it on YouTube to find the aerial maps that I'm referring to, but if I'm not mistaken, the title was Who Made These Arks? And they're amazing indentations on the earth, on the planet, at the top of 4 of the largest mountains on the earth. So here's what I'm getting at here. It's this. Noah built an ark. All the animals came to him willingly, and he had everything on hand to provide for all these animals without any problem whatsoever. This is the premise of the story. If I remove the boat from the equation, I can bring forward something quite impressive to you. This ark is actually a gardening tactic. That's what it is. It allows you to grow a large amount of stuff in a small space. they're also all found on the top of 4 mountains. The Epic of Gilgamesh was a quote-unquote world flood where I think an ark was built. Notice how they don't say boats, although you can find the word boats in other places. They do want to say ark. And then we have the Book of Mormon, where Nephi was commanded to build a boat, or an ark. So that's 2 mountains accounted for. We have Noah. Yeah, that's right. That's the 3rd mountain. Here's an interesting context, too. Didn't we say that we found Noah's Ark at the top of one of the highest mountains? That's an interesting one. So what am I getting at? I don't think the world actually totally flooded over. I think the survivors that noticed it realized, holy fuck, this sucks. And it looked like the whole world went to shit. But I think it was localized flooding. That's cool. It's no big problem. It's not a huge deal. We still survived it, right? We're good. Who cares if we built a boat or if we built a garden? But what I'm getting at here is that this guy gardened. He built an ark. He gardened an entire mountain. That sounds complex. And the cubits by cubits by cubits that we talk about are probably very real. They're probably just dimensions for his garden. Because here's where it gets fun. How do you think God stimulated all the animals to find their way to Noah and his ark? Well, where do animals go when the floodwaters rise? They seek refuge at the top of mountains. If the ark isn't a boat, if the ark is a gardening practice, he would have prepared for enough food for every one of the herbivores to get there. Although we didn't want to get bloody and stupid about it, the truth is that the carnivores would have been able to hunt in such a situation. All the animals would have survived. No boat required. The story will even go forward with the whole bird leaving the ark and returning. That makes complete sense. The bird is on a farm. It leaves, it flies, it still finds no more dry land. One day it finds dry land, brings a twig, bada bing, bada boom. Still, no boat required. If you observe it as a gardening practice instead of a boat, it makes a little bit more sense as to why they're finding these ark-like things at the top of the mountains throughout the world. They're not boats, they're gardening practices. The thing is that there's a 4th mountain that has the same thing. We have found no historical records of a 4th religious thing of sort within religious history that said that somebody else was commanded to build an ark. We might find it, and then we'll be able to say, oh, look, 4 mountains, 4 arks, 4 stories. It all makes sense. But we haven't found the 4th mountain story yet, the 4th reason. But I digress. So we're moving on from Noah's Ark going. Why did the flood happen? Because human beings like to test on things, and we mess with stuff genetically. You know, it's not cool what we were doing. Then, again, just like during the time of Babel. And then we move forward. And we end up in Jesus' time, where humans are doing their thing all over again. But again, they find themselves doing and living as the Babylonians did. This is what the Pharisees were teaching. This was the religion of them. This is what they did. They lived as the Babylonians did. Research what the Babylonians are. Like I said, we were asked to find the enemy, find out what they teach. I was told once, if you want to find out who the enemy is, find out what they teach their children. Well, that's a great way to figure it out. So, we got a few interesting things here, because Jesus Christ was a tree-hugging hippie to walk at the height of the Roman Empire. So there was a huge political construct that already existed at this point in human history. It was like a curveball, a different kind of adversity. Jesus wasn't just preaching against the Babylonians anymore, because it was bigger than that. It had spread throughout the lands. It had become a scourge upon the earth. And when people try to figure out what is that, it's the enjoying of little children. It's the enjoying of animals for sexual reasons. It's enjoying these things. that has become a scourge throughout the earth. No one wants to talk about it. We just call it some really bad word and move on with the story. But if you needed it to be defined, that's what it is. It is the most horrendous stuff that we see within our societies today. That is the scourge. That's what he was facing. Because why didn't Jesus go up against the Roman Empire? Because it wasn't the Roman Empire that was screwing stuff up. It was the ideological construct of the Babylonians that was seeping its way into everyday society. Which is why the crime rates were going up. Ritualistic child sacrifice is part of these teachings. Murder is acceptable as part of these teachings. This is crazy stuff. But this is, and it's like I tell people, you don't have to believe for the other guy to kill you for their God. You don't. That's what makes this stuff dangerous. This stuff is more dangerous than plutonium if handled inappropriately. You're messing with people's minds. You're messing with people's souls, their hearts, their everything. When you start messing with one individual's God. That's why all wars are religious wars. Because the second you try to conquer a populace and impose your religion, you're done. Seriously, if you were to walk in and conquer a nation and say, no, you don't have to change. No, I just didn't like your leader. Well, no, we're good. You just, business as usual, just live your life. And instead of the money going to that corrupt dude that was killing all of you guys, the money's just going to come to us. And we're going to do our best to try and help you. If that's how continents and nations were conquered, it would have been no problem. But that's not how stuff gets conquered. You ethnically cleanse, you get rid of people, you make sure that the right ideology, the brain, the people that are in that land think and look the way that you do and all that stuff. Conquering is dirty business, it's dirty pool. But that's what we used to do. That's what the human creature was part of. That's how empires are built. That's how fucked up it gets. So moving right along, that's why he was teaching things like return to Caesar what is Caesar's. If you don't want to be part of the money racket, the money scheme, the money problems, then just don't be part of it. Give the money back. Don't be part of a citizenship or whatnot. Go in the woods, build a hut, and mind your business, and hope that nobody comes and messes with you. But the truth is that we live in such a society today where you can't even build a deck or a patio without someone sniffing up your ass, let alone living peacefully in a teepee in the woods somewhere that someone else says that they own. So it's not going to be that easy. And I think that was the point of that quote-unquote teaching. Sure, no problem. Give the money back. But then you have to withdraw yourself from that society. Well, what are you going to go to? This is the biggest thing. Everybody talks about revolution, talks about doing this and doing that. Do we actually have an idea that we could go to? Do we actually have a beta ran society that we can then just start diverting our funds to? We don't have any of that. What else do we need? Seriously, what else do you need? You need food. You need intelligence. So people, the ability to teach people and so that you don't have a stupid society. Peaceful society. At one point or another, all societies will grow to a point where they require an economic structure. That's just, it is what it is. What kind of economic structure do you choose to follow? Now we've found ourselves into the questions that Tim Ann was asking the drummer boy about Canadian healthcare. Now, I never said that Canadian healthcare covers the dental and the vision, but there are ways that it can be done. I'll get into those ways, but the fundamental difference, and this is the problem with Canada and the United States, the differences, is that Canada, we are a very fluid, adaptive nation we take whatever you throw our way and we evolve and we move forward. And it really, truthfully doesn't bother us unless it actually hurts us. But if it doesn't actually hurt us, we can take a lot and meld and move well. But the problem is the Americans, the way their system is set up, it's not so fluid. It's very rigid. And this is one of the things about Donald Trump. One of the few things I do really like about Donald Trump is the fact that for every one new regulation he creates, 2 of them have to be annexed. By annexing 2 regulations and implementing 1 regulation, and in doing that, you're creating the ability to become a more fluid society. And this is what you're looking at, if you're trying to figure it out, Tin Man, it's called socialized medicine. It's from the socialist form of governing. Canada is a social capitalist nation. The United States is a capitalist nation. Okay? So this is how it goes. We take our taxes and we put it into the government, and the government picks up all the tabs for everything that is paid for by the government. It's more than just getting glue on your finger in Canada. It's more than breaking a bone in Canada. Although those are easy to illustrate, we're talking about women being able to give birth and walking out of the hospital without having to spend the umpteen amount of thousands of dollars it takes to cover bringing life into the world. That is bigger than cuts and broken bones, and that is a medical necessity. It is what it is. Certain things make the list of medical necessities, other things don't make the list of medical necessities, and this is where the healthcare debate begins. Because remember, it is our tax dollars that goes to the government that pays the services that we receive. That's medical, that's police, that's military. So when we feel like our services are not adequately meeting our needs, we need to look at the government and say, so what do we need to do to make this happen? And the government says, we need this, and in order to get this, we raise taxes. But we don't like raising taxes. Fuck that shit. I like the hospital just fine, don't I? Oh yeah, I fixed my wrist just the other week. All of a sudden the tune changes real quick. But that is what socialism is. So, democratic, social, capitalist nation means we choose our leaders, we take care of ourselves, and we allow ourselves to make as much money as we want for as long as we kick into the pot. That's Canada in a nutshell.